The day I try to film is the day that my hair decides it's going to have a massive amount of volume. First things first, I have animals on my t-shirt, which is really cool. Today I'm going to be doing a book haul, and it's the book haul of all my Penguin English Library Classics editions. I've been collecting these editions since I think summer, during the summertime. These are the ones that I already own. I own Persuasion by Jane Austen, Far from Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, and The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. So if you want to know any more about these books, I'll put a link to the haul that I mentioned these in. The first one is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Jane Eyre is one of my favourite classics, and I actually already have an edition of it. I have it in a vintage edition, and this vintage edition is a really nice edition. Like, the picture is very symbolic for the entire book, but I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I've had to sellotape so many pages because I've read Jane Eyre so many times. And this edition is really beautiful. I did think about maybe getting the cloth-bound classics edition, but paperbacks I think are a lot easier for me personally to carry around, use and to read, and it's just really beautiful. So I'm going to read you the back. Passionate, poetic and revolutionary, Jane Eyre is a novel of naked emotional power. It is a story of a defiant, fiercely intelligent woman who refuses to accept her appointed place in society and instead finds love on her own terms, and has become famous as one of the greatest romances ever written. But it is also a brooding Gothic mystery, a profound depiction of character, and a transformative work of the imagination. It's a brilliant book, one of my favourite classics, if not my favourite. I also own Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I own this in I think it's a Penguin Pocket Classic edition, or a Penguin Red Classics. Again, Wuthering Heights is one of my favourites, and I've had to kind of sellotape, and it's falling apart a bit, so it looks a bit rough. But this edition is just stunning and beautiful. I really love the soft covers of the Penguin English Library editions. And also, I find the binding of Penguin is a lot better than that of vintage, but this isn't vintage, but of a vintage edition of any book, like the one of Jane Eyre that's falling apart. I think the vintage binding isn't as good as Penguin. Wuthering Heights has achieved an almost mythical status as a love story, yet it is also a unique masterpiece of the imagination, an unsettling, transgressive novel about obsession, violence and death. It begins as a man is forced to shelter a strange, grim house on the Yorkshire moors during a snowstorm. There he discovers the tempestuous events that took place there years before, the intense love between Catherine Earnshaw and Fandolin Heathcliff, her betrayal of him, and how terrible revenge continues to haunt the present. His terrible revenge. I can't read off the back of the books. Really beautiful book. Wuthering Heights, if you were wanting to get into classics, I wouldn't necessarily start with Wuthering Heights because the use of narrative can be quite difficult if you've not read a lot of this type of literature before, but it really is a hate story, and it's one of those books I remember so many quotes of. It's just stunning, and I would definitely suggest it. And this edition is just gorgeous. Another book that I have read is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I've read two Jane Austens, this and Northanger Abbey. This has to be my favourite out of the two of them. Really witty, really fun, just really nice and really easy to read. Jane Austen's a great introduction to the classics. I was introduced to the classics by Northanger Abbey, so I definitely suggest it as a kind of an introductory book. I've never actually owned an edition of Pride and Prejudice because I actually started reading classics on my Nintendo DS. I don't know if any of you ever had that 100 classics collection game thing when you just read the classics, and I started, and I've never actually owned one, so it's really nice to actually have it here. With its sparkling wit, clever heroine, and moving love story, Pride and Prejudice is an immaculate comedy of manners and Jane Austen's most popular novel. Lizzie Bennet finds eligible bachelor Darcy arrogant the first time she meets him, and when she hears he's been meddling in her family affairs, is even more determined to dislike him. Darcy, however, finds himself increasingly attracted to her good looks and lively mind. In the story of misunderstandings that follow, Lizzie is led to question everything she thought she knew. Going back to the Bronte sisters, with Charlotte Bronte's Villette. I've never read this book. It is a book that I've always wanted to read. I'm going to read to the back. Often acclaimed as her greatest and most mature work, Charlotte Bronte's last, most autobiographical novel drew on her own unhappy experiences as a governess in Brussels to create a powerful story of unrequited love. Lucy Snow is alone without friends or family when she sets sail from England to find work at a girls' boarding school in the town of Villette. She struggles with unruly pupils and with her own troubling passions, first for the school's English doctor and then for the dictatorial professor, Paul Emmanuel. This was on my Nintendo game, and I remember really wanting to read it and just never getting around to reading it. And also I saw this, the actual cover, and it really struck me because a lot of the other Penguin English library classics are kind of soft kind of covers, but this was just really vivid and just very striking. This is Tess the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. As you may or may not know, Thomas Hardy is my mum's favourite author. I think definitely one of her favourites. I do actually own a copy of Tess the D'Urbervilles. I've never read Tess the D'Urbervilles. I've never read a Hardy. Really want to. Really desperate to. There is this version that I have. In fact, I read quite a bit of Tess the D'Urbervilles actually. Yeah, I've read quite a bit of it, but so I haven't actually finished it fully because other things got in the way. Last time I was reading it. But this edition is a a BBC Books edition. And it's horrible. This is the adaptation that starred Gemma Arterton in 2008, maybe. And Gemma Arterton, I mean, she's absolutely stunning, but I don't know if any of you ever had PowerPoint, and when you were kind of at school, you'd kind of create PowerPoints, and you'd do this little thing where you would try and fade the image into a background, like that, and it just looks really cheap and tacky. But the only thing is I have annotated this book, you can't tell that I've annotated it, quite a bit. I can find any annotation that you might be able to see. So I might keep this for my annotation, if I ever want to annotate it for any reason. But this edition is just stunning. And also I think with classics, really lovely, beautiful edition of classics really make me want to read them even more. It just makes me really excited. With its sensitive depiction of a wronged pure woman and its powerful criticism of Victorian sexual hypocrisy, Tess the D'Urbervilles shocked readers on publication. Its heroine is a poor country girl, Tess, whose encounter with her distant aristocratic relatives, especially with the handsome, cruel Alec, leaves her broken and haunted by a secret that could ruin her. A very different man, Angel Clare, offers her salvation, but Tess must choose whether to reveal her past or remain silent in the hope of a peaceful time. This is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I have read an abridged version of this book a very long time ago, and I remember really liking it, but I can't really remember much of the story. And a lot of people I saw on Instagram, including I think Kerry has actually put a picture of that she was reading this, and that's her favourite classic. She also made a video talking about classics and how this one's her favourite. So I just decided to buy it. Elizabeth Gaskell's compassionate, richly dramatic novel features one of the most original and fully rounded female characters in Victorian fiction, Margaret Hale. It shows how, forced to move from the country to an industrial northern town, she develops a passionate sense of social justice and a turbulent relationship with the mill owner, John Thornton. North and South depicts a young woman discovering herself in a nuanced portrayal of what divides people and what brings them together. Again, just stunning, gorgeous. Love Penguin. And the final one is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility were the two Jane Austen novels that I was really always interested in reading, but I haven't read this one yet. Some people said that it's a bit boring, whatever, but the story arc of the sisters I'm really interested in. Jane Austen's moving depiction of wild emotions and bitterly suppressed feelings tells the story of two sisters, impulsive, idealistic Margaret, whose whirlwind romance with the unsuitable John Willoughby leaves her open to harmful gossip, and Eleanor, who struggles quietly to conceal her own heartbreak, even from those closest to her. Through their parallel of experiences and the experience of love and its threatened loss, the two sisters learn that the path to happiness is not easy in a society where status and money govern the rules of love. So that is my book haul. There are a couple more in Penguin English Library Classics editions that I want to buy, including the Dubliners and Portrait of Dorian Gray and the Woodlanders, or was it and the Greenwood Tree. So there are quite a few that I want to buy. But I've been having these all in my little bookshelf for quite a while now, and I've been really excited to share them with people. So it's finally nice that I can actually do that.